Hello, fellow music nuts. It's me, Cubby, with another personal spin. And today's album I will be reviewing is Never Let Me Down by David Bowie. His last of his 80s period. I suppose it was an 80s trilogy because he released three studio albums and the Labyrinth soundtrack, which I haven't actually got and doesn't really count as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, this was released in 1987 and it flopped. However, in my personal opinion, the reason it flopped is because everyone had prejudged it to be rubbish because of the previous album, which wasn't horrendously good. And while this sounds a bit dated and cheesy these days with its over the top 80s electronic drums and things, I think the actual songs themselves are really good. And I actually prefer this album to some of his 90s stuff, if I'm really honest. And to some extent, I'd rather listen to this than, say, Low and Lodger, if I'm really honest. Which is probably quite surprising to a lot of people. But honestly, I think the songs themselves are really good. The production is what lets the whole album down. And indeed, Bowie said the same thing, really. He wanted to redo the album. And it has actually been redone, although after his death, and is released in a box set. The Loving the Alien box set, I think it is, which I don't have and probably won't get because I've got all the albums that is in it. So it's not really worth me getting it except to get the remade version of this. But to be honest, despite its failings, I actually really enjoy it. I enjoy the cheesy 80s drums and the tinny, wishy-washy synths and things. For one thing, it makes it unique. Well, not unique, but it's a different sound to be found in most of my personal CD collection, which is largely rock and metal and stuff. So it's quite refreshing for me, and maybe that's why I like it so much. It's because it's different. But also, I think people look on that time in the 80s a bit too harshly. For all its cheesy drums and stuff, one thing it definitely does have is passion. Bowie's vocals have not sounded this good since at least Young Americans, maybe Heroes. And again, although the drums aren't real most of the time, or they're like, electronic drums and stuff like that, they sound passionate, they sound energetic, they have power and things like that. And his next album, Black Tie White Noise, I find it very wishy-washy. I don't nothing really stands out. Whereas on this album, the last track, Bang Bang, sticks out. Glass Spider stands out for its weirdness. Day in Day Out, the title track, really stands out. Perhaps the worst song on the album is Shining Star, but even that's quite good. It's got sort of tongue-in-cheek funny songs like Beat of Your Drum, which is kind of a euphemism for sex, but in some ways it's actually quite modern lyrically, because he goes on about blowing your horn and doesn't take a genius to work out what he means. And so a man singing that in the 80s is quite, would, if anybody picked it up anyway, would have been quite controversial, if you ask me, because men back then, homosexuality wasn't as open back then, things like that. So in some ways the album is quite modern. And I really enjoy it. And yes, a lot of people don't like the 80s sound, but the songs themselves are actually really, really good. And for that reason, and that reason alone, I'm giving this album 9 out of 10 drums, because I really like it. I think this is a much overlooked and underrated classic. It's actually really good. And out of his 80s period, I prefer this. And I prefer this over probably, in fact, actually over all of the 90s period, which is saying something, really. you know. So there you go, kind of a controversial opinion, really, but you know, that's the great thing about music, is it's open to personal preference, and that's what my channel is about, getting people to discuss stuff and things like that, and not just going with the flow, as it were. So there you go, Never Let Me Down, Bowie's most derided album, now has a 9 out of 10 from me. Now, I'd like to hear the other version and see if I like it as much. Maybe I like it more, but we'll see. It all boils down to the songs being absolutely brilliant, except maybe what's it called, Shining Star is a little bit, I'm not sure what's going on with that one, but the rest of it's freaking brilliant. So there you go, 9 out of 10 stars. Thanks for watching. I have been Cubby. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment about what you think about this album. Maybe you hate it, maybe you think it's okay, maybe somewhere in the middle. I'll be back with more videos soon. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.